somewhere unseen. It got a little longer, so it seems.
Alrighty, g'day guys and welcome to episode 40 of the Bradley J Driver Experience. Of course, it's your boy Brad behind the mic. And before I introduce today's guest on the show, I'm going to give you guys a scoop that you've heard across social if you're following me and across the last few poddies. But 42 for CF, it's the event that I'm planning in Wollongong on December 12th. It is basically me, a very terrible Unco runner, running a marathon for Cystic Fibrosis Australia, not only to raise funds and awareness, but to spread the message that whatever you want to do in life, you can achieve it if you set your mind to it and you work hard. Jump over to socials on Instagram and YouTube. We've got hashtag 42forCF and you'll find all the information behind this event. Currently working with Wollongong Council to make it the first official marathon in Wollongong's history. So there's so many exciting things happening. But enough about that and a little bit about today's guest. I guess you could call this man the conductor of the orchestra, and I'm not talking an orchestra in traditional sense, but rather the arts, music, and just the creative scene here in our amazing hometown of Wollongong. He is the owner of Verb Syndicate. This gentleman's name is Simon, and he's come through the studio, the apartment, whatever you want to call it, today to basically talk all things Wollongong and this amazing sort of cultural scene that's improving by the day in our hometown. Simon, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, it's an absolute pleasure. It's been exciting because you were brought to my attention a little bit earlier in the year from the first guest on the show, Lockie Stevens, and we spoke about, Lockie and I were speaking about Wollongong and how it just seems like every year it sort of just goes to that next level. There's a little bit more art, a little bit more culture, more music happening, which is exciting for our city because once a very industrialised area with the steelworks and kind of that's what everyone was here for, to work and just work in the industry. It's exciting to start to see us take, I guess, that Melbourne vibe on and start to create a culture of our own.
Yeah, most definitely. Look, I was born and raised in the area, so I think, having a place where you have spent your whole life kind of, slowly start to become something that, you wanted to see and that you knew existed in other parts of the world. I think, it's it was a really beautiful introduction. I mean, I'd love to take credit for all of it. But, there's so many, been so many key players that I've partnered with and am friends with and have been connected with over the years. And, it's you couldn't tell you the amount of times I've used the cliche from, little things, big things grow, but it really has been, like that
exactly
process.
That.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So talk to me about where it all started, back in 2008, right?
Yeah. So the business Verb started in 2008, but Verb was kind of this concept that I'd created because at the time I was doing a lot of different things, doing a little bit of music stuff, some art stuff. I think at the time I had probably like 4 or 5 different, I don't want to say businesses because, business implies that there was profit. Yeah. I would call them brands, which were logos with probably Gmail and emails attached to them or something like that. I was doing a lot of work with like Jeb Taylor, who I mentioned earlier, off air was a guy that we were doing a lot of stuff together in terms of book and venues. I was doing graphic design stuff. He was running labels. And the aim for Verb really to come out of that stuff was that, like I said, I had all these different business names and, I had a brand for music, I had a brand for art, I had a brand for my own sort of personal art stuff. And I've never been super comfortable running under sort of me as an individual. I've always kind of liked to hide behind, like I guess like a brand identity or something like that. So Verb was really the concept of like Verb is a doing word and Syndicate is a group. So it's just this kind of group of people doing things, which meant that,
I like that. I was going to ask what the name meant.
Well, that's basically where the concept came from. So it didn't matter what I was doing, whether it was music, art, whatever. I could just roll it under this banner and it would work. So that was really where it came from. And I guess that was probably from about 2005. I lived in the UK in 2005 in Manchester. and had sort of planted a few seeds in my own head, and was overseas getting super inspired and contributing to some of the graffiti and street art stuff happening over there, and then came back, and sort of by 2008 had really formulated it and
That's unreal.
tried to hit the ground running.
And Wollongong at that time, like I was a young fella at that time, not to rub it in, but I was maybe like
8.
not quite that young. I think I was like, probably like 10, 12, somewhere like that. So I remember Wollongong, but I don't remember its cultural scene. Like I wasn't going out, I wasn't going to events.
Yeah.
But can remember it was very different to what it was now. For you coming from overseas where it's, everything, when you go to Europe or you go to the States, everything seems to be sort of 10 years ahead of where we are here. Could you see things that you thought, okay, that would work really well in Wollongong and that's what we need to start implementing?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's always been one of those things. Like I found like graffiti, as it would have been known, sort of, in the mid-90s, and it was this thing that absolutely completely changed my life. Like it was this pure raw thing, and at the time, look, to this day, like I still kind of paint more traditional lettering rather than sort of like street art, as it's probably more formally known now. But the crazy thing is, like, this stuff has been happening around the world for probably 25 or more years. You know, it's not something that's necessarily that new. But in terms of like what was happening in Wollongong at the time as well, I've always had friends that are a bit older than me as well, so probably in their like early to mid 40s now, and I would say, like, I was that kid that was about 16 or 17, couldn't get into venues, couldn't get into bars, but had friends that could, that were in bands or were artists. And I think the crazy thing with Wollongong is it's almost like this is in a way a bit of a renaissance. It sort of sounds like I'm potentially living in the past a little bit, but there's always been a crazy creative scene in Wollongong that's contributed nationally, but it came in the early and mid 90s, so it was done and dusted by the time a lot of people were ready to sort of take notice. So I think, I was really lucky in the sense that I got to observe some of that stuff and, remember, it's a bit of a Wollongong cliche, but, seeing some of the bands that are still around today, at the Oxford for free, so yeah, I think it's definitely been a huge evolution, and, the way things have happened has been really great. But yeah, like I think it's been bubbling and simmering away for decades, and you got to sort of pay respect to, I definitely want to pay respect to the people that were there before me and inspired me.
100%. So for you coming into the business in 2008, was it almost, because I think I've read on your website, it might have been that it's almost this, okay, how do we work with council? How do we work with the local governing bodies to make this something that people want to see and that we can continue to grow rapidly? Because that's always the thing with Wollongong. It's kind of hard a lot of great ideas that everyone has, it's hard to get them implemented and to find them within our council area.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the other thing was as well, like, as much as I've always enjoyed, in the past, like being an artist, whatever that means, playing in bands or creating visual work or whatever, I've always enjoyed that. But there's always been, that percentage that sits above me that I'm just like, you guys are like friggin' amazing. Like, why are you not huge? Why does everybody not know you? Why?
Yeah.
And that for me, like, I remember making a really conscious effort, I would say probably around 2010 or 11, where I was like, look, like, I just want to like dedicate what I do to unearthing and kind of collaborating with creatives, because a lot of my friends at the time, didn't have the confidence to kind of go in and present their ideas to a council or to a brand or to a business. But, I think I just I still would probably talk to anyone that'll listen. Yeah. So I kind of found pretty quickly that I just slotted into that position and it just worked. There were, in the early stages I was doing some painting as well and all the rest of it, but I kind of felt like my skills were really, in the communication and the ideas and formulating, I guess, like almost a bit of a, kind of producer role in a way. And, it just kind of went from there. And
How do you find yourself? So you've obviously got artistic talent, you've got that creative nature. But then to form that into a business and go, okay, we're going to put, like you said, not just brands, but we're going to make this something that has profit. We have to consider the loss. We have to consider how we actually structure this and grow this. How do you get your business brain on? Did that come natural, or was that something you had to really work on?
I've sort of always had a bit of a business mentality in terms of, okay, well, if I'm going to do something, like, it's got to go somewhere, it's got to be something. And look, as I get older, it's probably to my detriment as well, because I can't even have a beer with someone without kind of strategizing about, well, what's the beer going to be? Are we going to make the beer? And it can be quite addictive. But yeah, I think in terms of having the hat on, it's always been driven, and I feel like I just constantly talking cliches, but it's always been like so driven just by passion, like 100%.
Yeah.
And like I'm at the point where I've missed opportunities because they just fully haven't fueled who I am.
I get that.
And and I think it's a blessing and a curse, because it's a really great feeling to just be like, if it's not turning me on, then you're not going to get the real me. And if you don't get the real me, then it's not good for you. And if I'm not given, it's this whole kind of conundrum that you slide into. But yeah, like I think, like in terms of building it and developing it, I've never gone into anything like incredibly strategic where I'm like, okay, here's the point we're at now, and then I'm aiming, like that's my goal. Like I've never worked on long-term goals. I just think, whatever happens, you can't control what you're going to do here to when you're getting there. So I don't even worry about that sort of stuff. Wherever I end up is wherever I end up. I know based on my drive and the passion for what I'm doing at the time, wherever I end up is going to be a great spot anyway. So I don't kind of go. I've never understood people that do these, 5-year plans.
It's a very it's almost a very commercial mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, I think people need structure. Like people are different, some people thrive on that, whereas like, I can get really bored with repetition, and as much as I like structure and I like routine and all the rest of it and systems, like at the same time, like if I get too much of that as well, I just kind of want to revolt. And
you know what, I can comment on that. Like I found for me formally, because I think the first time we met, I was in my lunch break and my real estate day to day. And for me at the time, I felt like it was necessary to have goals because it wasn't necessarily passion driven. Yeah. It was more success driven. So it was like, if I don't have a goal that somehow allows me or focuses on being better next year than I am this year, doesn't make sense. But now as someone who, on the flip side of that, threw away any form of income and just decided to figure it out as I went, like, I think passion just allows you to live day by day and understand that if you're putting in the right thing and you feel like you're on purpose, you're actually going to head in the right direction anyways.
Yeah, oh yeah, completely. And I mean, regardless of whether you end up in a destination or whether or not you're still travelling on the highway of, lost dreams, as long as you're enjoying the journey, I don't think it really matters.
No,
like,
I agree.
If you're doing what you love, again, could you call
They're
it
all
so cliche 101? But, as long as you're doing what you love, like, I remember people saying that to me when I was young. So you're doing what you love, you'll never work another day.
Yeah, that's true though.
But it's, and look, I want to say at my age, but, I'm not getting any younger, and, I want to be in a position where I am genuinely only doing the things that I want to do, because, God, I've done so much shit that I didn't want to do,
That's a good question. What does that look like for you, doing the things you're absolutely passionate about? Is there a direction that... Firstly, we'll come back to that. Let's talk about what Verb is at the moment. Let's talk about the operation of it and then where you see it headed.
Yeah, well, again, like it's always just been that vessel of being able to do things, like whatever they are. So, I joke even sometimes with the boys in the office that, we'll be out there mowing lawns under Verb Syndicate if that's the opportunity that we feel is a good opportunity at the time. Yeah. The aim always, since it started, was to be able to kind of pivot quickly and be able to do whatever it is that we need to do. So at the moment, I guess the best way to kind of describe what it is, it's kind of like a creative agency. So finding opportunities taking our own ideas, taking other people's ideas, kind of formulating them into bite-sized or digestible pieces for people to come in and be able to either finance or co-finance those things. So an example of that could be something like we did an activation for Volkswagen at Semi-Permanent Design Conference, which there was, excuse me, worked with an artist from New York who we've actually brought out on 2 occasions, Jason Woodside. So he did Wonder Walls, and he also painted the back of the Tramp store, which is opposite Santuro in Globe Lane. So he did they actually did a VR test drive. Volkswagen did a VR test drive of their new Golf. Okay. But then we worked with Jason to kind of take, out of control, to take his creative and sort of roll that out onto the new VW Golf. He painted a mural in the foyer of Carriage Works, and it was this kind of whole like creative experience. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best way to describe what we do is like, it really is about trying to create those like moments or those experiences for consumers, customers, individuals, people, communities, whoever it is. And, it's sort of in a way a bit of a celebration of what that moment in time is. And
I feel like it's definitely something that's catching on. Like I can see the world as a whole moving in that direction where brands are looking for artistic opportunity to step out of the typical commercial advertisement space and look at something more creative, something that stands out in a world where you have to stand out to be noticed now because of how much there is plastered across social and all of these spaces. It's exciting to see you guys doing that from here. You mentioned Wonder Walls. Yep. Has that been maybe the biggest success in the business's time? Yeah, well, I mean,
I guess depending on what the metric of success is, financially, like definitely not. Yeah. But in terms of, I guess, what Verb's moment is or Verb's experience of how people often come to hear about us or know us is through Wonder Walls. Yeah. So in a way, like the festival has kind of become a bit of a business card for other opportunities. So, while it might be difficult to understand, we don't make a lot of money, if any money, out of the festival.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, it's more so putting Verb on a major scale,
and also being able to create a platform for us to be able to work with artists for the first time usually. So we'll bring artists from around Australia and around the world to Wollongong, as well as local artists, and kind of use that as a bit of an opportunity to network. And I think the best thing about Wonder Walls is that for the most part, it's always been, it hasn't been sort of vetted by creative constraints or anything like that. Yeah. So whenever the festival's been on, like even up until paint touches the wall, I don't even know what's going on the wall.
Okay,
and I love that. I think that's the most incredible kind of empowering part of the festival is that that there isn't this kind of death by committee approach to what's being painted onto these walls, because at the end of the day, all these different creative influences from all around the world are converging on Wollongong for one weekend to paint the walls. Like why would that be influenced by anyone else other than them?
And I guess that kind of explained it there. If you're listening to this going, what is Wonder Walls? We're not talking about the Oasis hit. We're talking about basically these ginormous paintings on buildings and massive wall space within the Wollongong area, which I can't remember the first time that I seen one. Mm-hmm. I think it might have been in town, because Wonder Walls happened in Port.
Last year was its first year in Port Kembla. Yeah, it started in 2012.
Where?
In Wollongong, yeah. So you probably know like one agency on Kira Street.
Yeah, that's where my sis works.
Oh, there you go. Who's your sister?
Shania.
Oh, okay, no. Because my office was above one agency. So I knew the guys quite well. But obviously after my time. But the portrait of the girl, Celestine, is the female's name on the wall. Have you ever seen that one? So that was kind of the big moment in 2012, which was a guy from Melbourne by the name of Roan. Okay. And for any of your listeners, definitely recommend go and check his stuff out. And it's got a book out as well, so give it a buy.
Give him a plug.
Yeah.
Hope he's listening.
Oh, Kit does the most amazing stuff. And I was looking through some old press stuff the other day, actually, and at that time he was quoted in one of the interviews as he'd only just gone full-time artist 12 months before that. So guess what? That's like 9 years or 8 years ago now. And if you look at where that dude's at now and the body of work that this guy's done, absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So I guess like that's a real heartwarming kind of experience to have connected with someone like Roan at such an early stage.
Definitely.
And to see where, not only, what the culture has become, but, what the artists have become as well, Like...
That's something that I give you a lot of credit for, and I think something I really respect. Probably the thing I respect most about what you're doing with Verb Syndicate is for someone like, say, myself, who has taken the plunge, you just said it there, for like someone to go full-time artist or full-time creative usually means you're not making much money. And that's unfortunately the reality for a little while. But someone like yourself continues to provide opportunities for these people to be recognised, to grow, to actually make some sort of financial, have some form of financial stability in their creativity. It's so exciting as someone who's stepping out and taking that risk.
Oh, completely. And I mean, like, very kind with your words for sure. But, a lot of these guys are just so self-motivated and self-propelled that, I mean, I've said to people in the past as well, like, I get really excited when you come across a creative or anyone in business for that matter, where you get this feeling like it doesn't matter whether you help them or not. Like they're going to do it. They're going to do it, and they're going to kick goals. And if you either get on or you get off. You know what I mean? And for someone like Roan, I mean, even that wall as an example, he was actually supposed to paint another wall which was much smaller, and it fell through like I think the day before the festival. And I still remember getting on the phone to one of the real estate agents and just begging them for this wall because one agency weren't in the building at the time. It was empty. And I'm like no one's in there. Like, just, if whoever moves in, if they don't like it, like, I'll personally come and I'll paint over it. And in my head, I'm just thinking, well, Roan's just probably going to take the first half of the wall, because at that time we didn't have budget for lifts or, we had a ladder and that was probably about it. And next thing you know, like, I'm down at the wall and like Roan's on the phone to like Coates, and I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I've just hired a lift. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, I've hired a lift. And I'm like, dude, we don't have any money for it. He's like, I'll pay for it, it's all good. So he's gone and hired himself a lift. Next thing you know, this thing turned up at the wall and he's taken the whole thing out, So for him, like, this was that moment where it was like, I'm just going big. Like, I'm just going all in on this
opportunity to be noticed.
Yeah. And look, while we probably couldn't take the accolades that was, the first street art festival in Australia, like, it would have been pretty close, I think, at the time, in terms of, like a multi-day, multidisciplinary event. And dude, he just like grabbed the bull by the horns. And I still remember like that Monday going into the office and just, I think it made the front page of the paper as well. Yeah. And we had no permission from council. Like, we just ran this event like fully underground, you know what I mean? Like, a little bit of social media advertising, a few flyers, and
just took the risk.
Off we went, and it was the best feeling. Would love to recreate that. Feeling.
I think, and for me to be able to see that around Wollongong, I know it's never going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I just think I used to profit off the sale of new buildings like we're sat in now. As an agent, you sell them, but I just think, don't you get sick of seeing the same thing all the time? Then you get sick of seeing a lack of creativity or
blank
culture,
bricks.
or it's just nice to have something there that symbolises maybe a moment. Like, I know for you that you'll probably always remember that office for that, or for someone who walks up that street. And I used to have coffee across the road. We spoke about Opus. I used to have coffee across the road probably 3 times a day, every day. And I used to look at that and just think, that's so much better than staring at brown bricks.
Yeah, it's funny actually, like, because, without giving too much away, in the process of planning another project at the moment, I was just going through my photos and I was coming across a bunch of the old walls, you know, before the paintings, like the wall on the David Jones building with the guy with the koalas, so Smug. So that wall before that was on there, you know, and these before and afters, because I obviously have no recollection of what those walls even looked like before there was paintings on them. It's, as far as I'm concerned, they've existed, you know, since the beginning of time, you know. And then when you see them without the paintings, like it's a real bizarre thing to think of. I don't know, like I probably should, maybe that's a little project. I'll maybe put a little deck together with the before and after of every.
That would be great.
Yeah, because I think it's probably over 100 walls now within the CBD.
Have they all been organised through you guys?
I'd say the majority. Like there's a few that haven't, but you know, I've over the years worked relatively closely with council as well, and have started to deliver projects with them sort of one-on-one. So the IPAC wall, with the guy on the elephant. So that wasn't a Wonder Walls wall, but that was a project that we worked on to deliver with
Can
council.
I ask, it may not be, but I was actually speaking, when I announced that you guys were coming on, I shared on my story on Instagram a photo of, I think it might have been Jason painting a Wonder Wall or doing some form of street art here in Wollongong. And I had someone reach out who was saying that a friend of theirs who tragically passed, a young girl, Skylar. From the local area, passed way too young in a real tragic passing, and she was painted on a wall. Was that through you guys?
That was a Wonder Walls project. Yeah, and like it was tragic story. And so Claire Foxton actually had, and again, like don't completely quote me on this, but from my understanding, had a relationship with the family. And knew Skylar, and used her as the model in her piece. And at that time, I think that was 2016. Ish. Created the work, and I think from memory, like that was one of the first big-ish walls that Claire had painted as well. So it was a pretty special moment.
100%. And what a nice thing for the family and the friends of that girl. Like, I didn't know her personally, but I know so many people did. She seemed like she was pretty popular and well known. For family and friends to be able to see that, and you know what I mean, that's a reflection of a young life that everyone loved and everyone loved being around. That's what the art's about, and that's such an amazing thing for this city.
100%. And look, you know, Claire completely and utterly, you know, did the project justice and did Skylar complete justice. You know, it would be really interesting to. I actually reached out to Skylar's dad when I heard about the project. About her passing. You know, just to sort of, out of respect, it was a complete and utter blowout. And look, I didn't have a relationship with Skylar or the family or anything like that. We met briefly during the festival, but. Yeah, super crazy circumstances, but like I said, definitely glad that the piece is encapsulated, and just again about representing those moments in time. 100%.
Talk to me about the future of the business, and what do you want to do that you haven't been able to do yet?
It's interesting. Again, you know, like I've tried not to sort of put my head up and look too far ahead. Just because, I mean, who would have thought we'd be sitting in the middle of a global pandemic, and we had some pretty over the top plans with an event space that we had at the time and a gallery and all the rest of it. So, I mean, I don't know, like we've got a few little things in the fire, a few irons in the fire. So like I don't know, just ticking along. I wish I had a better answer to that.
No, it's all right.
But doing a few interesting things at the moment, back in and doing a little bit of stuff around music. More sort of creative arts in music rather than music directly. I think just enjoying ourselves. I feel like it's such a cop-out.
And you can see that. You can see, like for me, I was scrolling through your Instagram again yesterday, and you can see that there's just so much happening, and it looks like it's all a big ball of fun. And it's an exciting time for Wollongong because there's so many we spoke about a few bands before, some artists. You know, there's guys like you got, the Inspired Unemployed, who I don't even know how you categorise them. but, you know, local lads that are just having a ball and being creative, and I've seen you guys done some work with them.
Yeah.
It's just exciting to see all these people emerging from, which potentially is one of the positive byproducts of COVID.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. I mean, like, the one thing, even just on my way here this morning, when I grabbed the coffees and I ran into Blake. He used to own Lower East Cafe.
Yeah.
And,
Blake is in here.
Oh, does he? Oh, there you
Yeah.
go. Oh, small word. But look, I hadn't seen him in like 4 or 5 years. And again, going back to Wonderwalls, in terms of those moments, like Blake, I remember, because he's obviously, there's a piece on that wall by Finton McGee, and trying to get that over the line with the owner. He was in the cafe, he owned the cafe at the time, and you know, we had a really great experience in, like, he was so keen to get it done, but the owner was a bit like, you know, which at that time, I think that was 2013.
Still very new.
There was no proven kind of, you know, track record or anything like that. But just seeing him then, and, you know, he was telling me that, you know, he's got 2 restaurants over in Indonesia, and, you know, like, so kind of hearing about all these, I really like that as well, as about sort of hearing about people's success from Wollongong, but outside of Wollongong.
Definitely.
Because I think a lot of my early years, I didn't think anything existed over the escarpment. It was almost like the part in the Lion
It is a
King,
little bubble here, isn't it?
You know, where I was like, what? You're allowed to go over the hill? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't know, you know. But
It's funny, isn't it? Like, and that's, people always, it's funny because I get the same question with this.
Yeah.
You know, how do you see this growing in Wollongong? And I'm like, well, to be honest, I tell my mates all the time, I message Rogan once every 3 months. Like, hey, bro, one
Just
step
checking
closer
in.
to you.
Yeah.
Like, let me know when I'm coming on, or let me know when you're coming on, all the time.
Yeah,
I think people forget that you can actually succeed outside of here, but I think you can still do it within now because of these phones and this technology.
Location's
and
irrelevant now.
the locations
completely.
become completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
But it's nice to see that we almost are appreciated on a much higher scale now.
Yeah, I think I saw that the most with like Sydney. I still remember going to like art shows and friends being like, "Oh, you staying up for the night?" And I'm like, "No, mate, I'm just going home."
Yeah, just
after
do the
this.
hour drive.
Just come up for an hour, you know.
Yeah.
And there was this perception that, you know, Wollongong was this. I think there's a weird connection between Wollongong and Newcastle. I think people from Sydney think that Wollongong is as far away as Newcastle. But it's interesting now because a lot of those Sydney folk are slowly starting to migrate down the hill, and, you know, because they can't afford the property prices. And, you know, it's like, don't call it a comeback. We've been here for years.
100%. I was in Melbourne in 2018. Yeah, I think it's 2018 for about 9 months.
Yep.
And I remember, like, I'm a bit of a love of coffee, and I'd go to cafes all the time, and people would go, "Oh, new face, where are you from?" And I was like, "Oh, Wollongong." And they go, country Victoria boy, eh? And I'm like, not at all. Not at all. You missed the mark there. Like, we're literally an hour south of Sydney.
That's Dapto they're thinking of.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just funny that it's a disconnect.
Yeah. Maybe it's not exclusive to Wollongong in the fact that, you know, everybody kind of thinks that everything is another world away. You know, it's like Instagram and all the rest of it. All social media is just connected that world. I mean, if anything, the lockdown now is, you know, the amount of Zoom meetings I've had where it's like,
how normal has that become?
Oh, it's so good though, because the amount of times that, you know, you go to a meeting and it can take, you know, 3 or 4 hours round trip, getting up, getting back, like in terms of going to Sydney, and then, okay, cool, I'll send you an email, sweet, no worries, catch you later. And it's like, oh, could have just done that over Zoom,
100%.
you know. So I feel like now that's kind of become a new normal for us, is like, let's just try and get face-to-face digital. And if there's a connection, and if we feel like we've got something, then let's actually make the trip.
I think you're probably more open to it being a creative sort of mind, but even in the corporate space, I think it's actually opened up like an element of trust with employees and employers, where do you really need to be in the office 100% of the time? Yeah. You know what I mean? To be working, like, can you be at home? Can you be in a cafe? Can you be somewhere off-site or out of location that you're still being productive in your job and using the technology that we actually have?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think, you know, businesses probably just need to now start worrying about, like, you know, what the output is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it matters. I mean, if you can do a 40-hour job in 20 hours a week, then do it. You know, there'd be people in corporate office blocks be screaming that for probably 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that's just like the institution and the establishment. It's like we've done it like this.
Yeah.
I've worked in somewhat corporate positions and government positions, and it's just, again, I think it comes back to that thing a bit similar to the 5-year goals, is like some people just need structure.
Yeah.
Because I tell you what, like if I had one of those jobs and I could just sit on the lounge and watch TV, that's probably what I'd do.
Yeah.
Leave you to your own devices.
Yeah.
And I'd be my worst own.
How do you go in a corporate space?
I'm terrible.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrible. I lasted 8 months in a relatively good, high-paying, high-profile sports marketing role.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I'm going to bounce, eh?
It's not easy, is it? When you just, especially I struggle. Like I had amazing bosses. I worked at MMJ in Wollongong. Amazing bosses who let me do a lot of things that typically wouldn't be allowed in real estate.
Yeah.
And I still struggled because I don't think I'm a good employee.
Yeah, right.
They might argue that, I've always done the right thing by the business, always loved the business and looked after the people that were around me. But I just enjoy like making decisions out of whim and just going for it and kind of being a bit risky.
Yeah.
Which I think doesn't work well in the corporate world sometimes. Or maybe it would if it was allowed to be expressed a little more.
Yeah, well, I think everybody, in those environments are accountable to somebody else, whereas in your own sort of employment, you're only accountable to yourself. So if you miss a job or, you don't make, your income goals, then you don't get the nice thing. But, when you're in a job, you've got the person above you and the person above you and the person above you, and it's just like the human centipede of not wanting to take risks. And I think people get used to their lifestyle as well, is that, if you're on $100,000 a year and that's guaranteed, then, you get used to the nice car, you get used to the nice house, that you're not going to want to rock the boat.
You know what? It's funny because I said to a lot of people, I reckon that is the undo. I don't reckon a lot of people enjoy their lifestyle as much as they think they do. And I think that a lot of the time lifestyle is almost a mask for unhappiness at work.
Yeah, wow. This could be part 2 on that one, I reckon. It's, look.
Don't you reckon?
Yeah, completely. And look, I think I've been guilty.
We all have.
Of that with, so the sports marketing role, like it was crazy because I got the job like pretty much after uni, so I was probably like 24 or something like that. And it was a really sweet paying gig. Had media passes, had petrol card, had my income and then no other costs.
Yeah.
And it was next level. And I've never experienced, I don't want to say it was depression because, that's a real heavy word, but like the level of like sheer unhappiness that I experienced. And I'd never sadly seen that much money in my life, and it wasn't even a lot of money, but at the time I'm just 25 and thinking, I'm killing it, but just wasn't feeding my soul. And that's the one thing as I'm getting older now is that like, that's got to happen. Otherwise I'm just I don't know, puppet or something like that.
You know what? Like there's a story, I still remember reading a story a couple of years ago and I didn't understand it until I made the move myself and took the risk of like this. It was just some sort of little fictional story that I read about some guy who works a corporate job in London, in the city or whatever, and he makes a lot of money for his family, and every year they take all that money they've saved and they go on a trip to Italy so he can fish off the jetty on the coast for a month.
Yeah.
And one day he's sitting there and he's talking to this local fisherman, and the local fisherman says, "Oh, what do you do?" And he says, "I work this corporate job in the city in London and it's great because I make all this money and I can come here and enjoy this for a month every year." And the local fisherman was like, "Well, I do this and I enjoy it every day and I make just enough money for what I need." And for me, understanding that in my current circle, like I literally right now make no money. And some people find that so hard to fathom because
I bought the coffees.
I was looking at like probably realistically over 100 grand this financial year that I probably would have made if I was on the same path that I was last year with real estate. And people go, "How do you throw that away?" I literally can't wipe a smile off my face every day. Bounce out of bed at 5 every morning, doing everything I love every day, and I'm working in the right direction. I feel like I'm just on purpose.
Yeah.
So I don't need to live the lifestyle where I'm splashing cash.
Yeah, well, you can make money in other ways, and money isn't always money, is it? Like currency value,
100%.
like is other things, you know.
And I
time.
think money just becomes a byproduct of doing what's right.
Yeah, yeah.
And I believe that. And I think if you got that relationship with it, it eventually does. And I can see opportunity opens every week for me.
Yeah, totally. I think more money, more problems as well.
100%.
Classic 90s.
So if anyone wants to just send some this way to alleviate your problems.
Maybe we take sponsored posts. I can plug the cafe. What was it?
Utopia today.
Big ups.
So,
Dave and the crew.
But no, I think it's really nice to see, I think, a massive realisation through this whole period that a lot of people are starting to figure out what, you know, when this all started. So I'm going to preface a story from probably 3 months ago. I was on the podcast with Joe Damon, the comedian from NZ. Mm-hmm. Love that guy. I've become good mates with him. He's an absolute legend. And I remember talking to him at the time, and he was just starting to get some exposure. He ended up growing, like within sort of 2 months after that, like 10, 12, 15,000 followers on IG.
Yeah.
Sold out a heap of shows through NZ. But was sitting there in the peak of their COVID lockdown talking about how everyone was struggling with this concept of staying home for a month. And I said, how the fuck can you go from worrying about staying at home for a month with your own time to going back to doing a job you hate for 38, 40 hours a week, every week for the rest of your life? How does that make any sense?
Yeah, it's a bizarre concept. I mean, like, the lockdown thing for me was scary in the beginning, but then at the same time, you know, I think it almost was the recalibration for a lot of people. I remember, like, getting super reactive in the moment, like, you know, we've got to find additional ways to make money, we've got to do this, we've got to do this. And I remember reaching out to a few friends that weren't even necessarily creatives, but just sort of more in the business world, and they're like, dude, I'm just having a break, like, I'm loving it. And they weren't, you know, they weren't financially sound, you know, they were having the same worries that I would say 99% of the, you know, everybody else were having, but they were just like, look, this is like, you know, this is forced our hand.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I was doing things like, you know, sorting out my photos, you know, like it was into folders, like, I felt so guilty, but at the same time, you know, like, you're never going to get that. I don't think those moments are ever going to return again. Even now, we're not completely out of it, and I still am not in the headspace or have the ability to now go and finish what I started with the photos, you know. So I think, just owning that moment and, you know, enjoying the forced break, the forced hiatus, you know. So definitely, it's interesting. Biggest
learnings for you in, I guess, life and business. If you look back on maybe one big mistake, and I don't like to say mistake, we learn from, you know, mistakes are just learnings and failures are just learnings that set you up for success later on. But is there anything you wish you knew 10 years ago? And is there anything that you've learned along the way that's been monumental?
Wow, you should put these on a list for me so I would be...
I like it, spontaneous.
Be prepared. I think it's just an ongoing thing of, you know, like, I don't know what to do, but I constantly know what to not do. And I think I've just kind of used that as a bit of a propeller reoccurring theme, that it's like, okay, here we are again. What happened last time? History undoubtedly repeats itself. Yeah. So keeping that in mind, you know, in a situation, it's a weird balance, isn't it? Because, you know, like, history can repeat itself and you can handle things differently, but this moment in time could mean that you need to handle it exactly the same, you know. So I guess, just trying to assess it purely on your gut. Like, that's I think been my biggest thing, is like, always trust your gut.
It's so true.
If it doesn't feel right, like, I've done things that have been absolutely against every fiber of my being, and it's been like pulling a fish hook out just to make a decision, you know. And I think it's like, you know, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a fuck no, you know. So I think that's probably,
I like that. I reckon that could even be like, you could print that on a t-shirt. If it isn't a hell yes, it's probably a fuck no. I like that.
I'll take 20% of the commission.
I'll probably use that,
It's all yours, mate. I probably jacked it from somewhere. Anyway.
I'll probably get done for a copyright or something there.
Yeah, sued. But, I don't know. I think that's got to be it. Like, if it's just not a natural... If it's just not a natural fit, small problems now, big problems later. You know, I think everybody's had those experiences. Could be, you know, a tenant or a
definitely.
vendor,
Yeah.
you know, and they're a pain in the ass now, they're going to be a massive pain in the ass later. And
Ooh, 100%. I'll tell you what, but I was blessed because I seen it happen.
yeah,
I always, I think just because I was so me, I just attracted the right people to work with.
yeah, right.
So I walk down now, like I'm a bit of a like blue mile walker twice a day.
Ooh,
I've become one of those professional power walkers during COVID.
Lorna Jane.
No, all night kit.
Brand boy.
I'm going full brand. I'm trying to get a sponsorship off Nike.
Yeah, okay.
I've been hitting them up. So if you're listening, Nike, bloody get around it. But I bump into old clients all the time, and one of my mates goes, "Oh, what, family friends?" And I'm like, "Nah, clients." And he's like, "You guys are bloody having hugs and shaking hands and laughing, and you know what's going on with their family." And I just think that's the thing. It's like if you feel good connections with people, work with them. If you don't,
Totally.
you got to learn to say no.
Yeah, totally. Actually, a friend used to always say, you know, the second best answer is no as well. Like even in terms of like pursuing things, like, you know, when things are up in the air and all the rest of it, like, you know, obviously the best answer is yes, but the second best answer is no. So you can move on, get on to something else. But I think that's a great, you know, if you have that rapport with people, I think that's a great attitude, especially as much as we talked about Wollongong being the bubble.
Yeah.
Like it's so crazy, especially now with social media, how interconnected the community is, but also the communities that, you know, what do they say? Be careful of the toes you tread on today because it'll be connected to the asses that you have to kiss tomorrow. And it's so, you know, you only got to do one or two things, get a bit of a reputation, and then, you know, credibility is really hard to get.
100%.
But it's so quick, you know, to lose. So
bloody oath it is.
yeah.
Talk to me about, for the listener that's tuning into this episode today, how can they interact with Verb Syndicate as a business? How can they get involved in supporting the events and these artists that are, you know, basically putting their lives on the line to continue to creatively produce?
Yeah, look, just the usual, you know, social media, email. Just got a phone connected yesterday, landline.
How's that, hey?
Send us a fax. Yeah, look, just any way. Like, I mean, we're on Kembla Street above the Throsby. Just walk in, come and say good day, and, you know.
Awesome.
That's the easiest. Keep it old-fashioned.
100%.
Handshake.
Hey, Verb Syndicate on Instagram, just one word?
Yep.
Perfect. Everyone, go ahead on socials, follow these guys, doing awesome stuff. And it's actually a really fun page to follow just to see the journey that not only you take, but we take as a community here creatively. And I've enjoyed it for the past couple of months that I've been tuning in and watching your stuff. So, Simon, it's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything you want to leave the guests with?
No, thanks for having me. Great experience.
Mate, the experience. The Bradley J.
experience.
Driver experience. Take it easy, guys. Subscribe. And, hey, as always, 5-star ratings all around.